Hi again, Yuri. Welcome to your sixth lesson on the First World War. It's Miss Cherry today. Hope you're all well. Our lesson title today is What Impact Did the First World War Have on People's Lives? So, in order to be prepared for your lesson today, you need your history workbook, a pen, some scrap paper, and absolutely no distractions. So you might want to press the video now to pause and get yourself ready. Okay, let's have a little look at a knowledge recap quiz focusing on last lesson, which was how did the war affect civilians? Our first question is what were Germans classed as living in Britain during the war? What caused the most deaths on the home front? What was conscription? What name was given to people who refused to fight during the war? And finally, name 2 jobs carried out by women during the war. Now would be a great time to press pause and do the questions before the answers come up. Okay, let's have a little look at the answers. So, the Germans were classed as enemy aliens that lived in Britain during the First World War. Air raids caused the most deaths on the home front. Conscription was forcing men to join the army between 1916 and 1918 to replace those that had volunteered and had sadly lost their lives on the Western Front. The name given to people who refused to fight during the war was conscientious objectors. This was because of religion or humanitarian reasons. And women worked in factories, notably the munitions factories, repairing ammunition for the front line, and also on farms, as you might remember, the Women's Land Army. Okay, so if you want to pause your video now and mark your answers and give yourself a score out of 5. To recap then, our lesson title for today is What Impact Did the First World War Have on People's Lives? And our objectives are to explain the impact of the First World War on soldiers on the Western Front, on people around the world, and also on civilians in Britain. As you can see, our knowledge organiser should be completely covered in colour or stars or shapes, as we have now looked at every word and definition on here and the key events. If you have not completed it and it doesn't look similar to this or has shapes beside it to say that you've looked at that vocab or event, then now is the time to press pause and have a little read through to recap those missing vocabulary words or key events. Okay, our starter today, activity 6.2, is some active reading. I want you to spend 10 minutes actively reading through the previous lessons that you have looked at, and you should highlight or underline any evidence that shows the impact of the war on people's lives. And as we've mentioned before, our focus is soldiers on the Western Front, people around the world, and civilians in Britain. Now would be a good time to pause the video and have a little read. So a recap of knowledge so that we are ready to answer this question, what impact did the war have on people's lives? So these are just some areas. You have went into a lot more detail than this in your workbook, and so you should not just rely on this information and the resource page of lesson 6, but in actual fact all of your workbook. So we'll start with soldiers on the Western Front. The area between enemy trenches was known as no man's land, where soldiers risked their lives to cross to attack the enemy. They lived close together, accompanied by lice and rats. The cold and wet conditions led to 75,000 soldiers dying from trench foot alone. The Battle of the Somme was one of the most bitter and costly battles, as there were more than 57,000 British casualties and more than 19,000 soldiers killed on the first day alone. So the impact on people around the world. 1 in 10 sailors in the Royal Navy lost their lives between 1914 and 1918. Civilians also lost their lives at sea. For example, 1,198 passengers on the HMS Louisiana were killed on the 7th of May 1915 by a German U-boat. And around 1.7 million Russian soldiers died in the First World War, and over 1 million civilians died of starvation and disease. Russia was believed to have the worst effects of World War I than any other nation. Civilians in Britain then. Almost 4,700 people were killed or wounded by air raids. This was the first war civilians had been killed in Britain. Britain developed strong anti-German feeling fed by the propaganda, especially that which happened to the civilians on the 7th of May 1915. And 30,000 Germans, Austrians and Turks were classed as enemy aliens in Britain in 1914 and were interned, which means imprisoned, in case they tried to sabotage the war effort in Britain. Telegrams reported the deaths to family members of the fallen soldiers, which were dreaded by all of the receivers. 246 Leeds families received the news from the first day of the Battle of the Somme that they had lost a loved one. So let's get moving on then to our main activity. As you can see, you have an essay to write, which is a response to the question, what impact did the First World War have on people's lives? We've looked at our 3 focus areas, and I have given you a checklist that you need to read through in order to produce an excellent piece of work. I've also given you some starter sentences that may help you if you get stuck. What I need you to make sure that you are doing in this is that you are actually explaining and not just describing. Okay, explaining is using the word because and thinking about that impact. What did that mean for the people on the soldiers on the Western Front? What did that mean for people around the world? What did that mean for civilians in Britain? Okay, and there is also further research at the bottom. I've given you a little link to BBC Bite Size website, which will get you going. And I've suggested researching what happened, what was the result of the war, and what happened at the Treaty of Versailles. So you've got this information page. Remember, this is just a quick recap. You still need to go through your other lessons to find more detailed information. And also some lined paper for you to write your essay on. Remember, you need to take a new paragraph for each topic you're looking at. And you also need to read back through your work to check for spelling, punctuation and grammar. Please use your knowledge organiser to help you with the spellings and ensure that you are including key vocabulary and events. It would be great if you spent some time planning and revising your work before doing your essay without any help, maybe just the starter sentences, to see how much you have learnt. Thank you for listening. If you need any help, please contact your history teacher via email or show my homework. We are here to help. Take care.